Okay, thank you. I'm going to do this talk for both of us, but as Heiðar introduced us, we work together. We work as a collaborative team on all our art practice. I totally agree with that. It could be really valuable for education, schools, and so on to see the material that are coming from this row of conferences. But I cannot resist, because it's something that is really important to me, to mention that we talk about STEAM now, which is basically including the arts. And that's one of the things that we're very proud to be here today. I wanted to just to go a little bit, I don't know, I hope you have seen the exhibition that we have downstairs. So I wanted to go a little bit through the exhibition, the process of making the work for this, the underlying ideas, and the importance of the scientific collaboration in all of our projects. So scale is one thing that we wanted to capture. I want to talk a little bit more about that later. But to give the audience an idea of the enormity of the focus of the project, the Blue Whale, we worked with Quad Studio, or Arnar Ómarsson, who is a former student of mine from the art school in Iceland, to create this image to scale that speaks directly to the context of the building housing each exhibition. So Thomas Welcome Royce, yeah? He and his industrial whaling station in Seyðisfjörður from 1863 to 1866, it is thought to have been the first in the world. It is quite important. It was the then director of Skaftfell Art Center, curator Perry Stave, also an American, who commissioned us to consider this historic site as a catalyst for our art project. And the image to the right of the, to the right is the whaling station around the time of, from around the time of Thomas Welcome Royce. So this is the site, today of Royce whaling station at Vestalseyri, looking back into the fjord towards the town of Seyðisfjörður. There is little to see there now, just some ruins from subsequent buildings, but nothing from the whaling station itself. But like for us, when we're doing our art project, which often are site and context related, it's really important to be in these places to kind of put ourselves as much as possible into these kind of contexts, be they just environmental and just the site itself, yeah? So this is an image of Ragnar Edvaldsson, who's a marine archaeologist, as some of you may have heard of. He works for the University of Iceland Research Center in Westfjord, I think still, and he has been researching many whaling station sites, particularly in the Westfjords. Subsequent to us beginning our project, he came to Seyðisfjörður to test his theory that blue whale bones from this period are to be found in the fjord. I mean, actually, he only, during this time, we didn't get the funding that we applied for, and he only managed to do this one dive. And although he was adamant that these bones would be there, he didn't find any at this particular dive. But despite that, as in all our project, we are very interested in the search itself and in the intriguing possibility search remains that might have been there. And with the help of the local rescue services in Seyðisfjörður, we were able to capture the underwater footage ourselves from the area around Vestalseyri. So they helped us to go out with a sort of submarine with a camera on, and we were sort of scanning the bottom of the sea around Vestalseyri, but and that's part of one of the video installations that you'll find downstairs in the exhibition. And this is just one of the still from that video installation. Welcome. Thank you. Early on, we had made a contact with Marianne Rasmussen, who many of you may know, and she kindly introduced us to some of the research activity at Skjálfandi Bay. Following this up, we were invited to take part in the summer course of the University of Iceland Research Center Húsavík, and this allowed us to make multiple trips onto the fjord, Skjálfandi. The whaling watching tours work in tandem with the research teams, and we were privileged to occupy the observation platform alongside them. And this image is from one of these trips. Photography plays a big part in the search of individuals' whales and their local and global identification. This focus on the individual is similarly at the core of much of our art practice, where we look for difference in physiology and behavior, particularly events and encounters, rather than what is necessarily common or repeated. I'm not wanting to elaborate too much from my little text because there's only a 20 minutes time, and normally when we do a presentation on our artwork it's a little bit longer, so I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to go over the time, and that's why I'm rolling this out to you, but sort of hopefully I will get the information across. But this experience is simultaneously exciting and despairing. The constant click of cameras, I'm here thinking about on board these whale watching tours, many with long lenses, brought to our mind the photographic terminology of shooting, capturing, and taking, which called to mind the rather loaded and tragic meaning in the context of Icelandic whaling. The shadow of whale watchers along the back of this humpback speaks poetically both to our historic and our contemporary engagement with citizens. And you can see that those shadows there on the back. So in much of our work, we have explored loss in relation to animals. Since the whale slipped below the surface of the ocean into a world we still know so little of, and leaving this beautiful trace amongst the waves fascinated us. It is a common phenomenon which the Inupiaq people refer to as the path of the unseen whale, a term we later adopted as a title of one of our artworks. I mentioned earlier the importance of scale and its relation to reality or the living being in this instance. Through research done by, amongst other, Marie Laroux at the Húsavík Research Center, and again based on photographs and other data, we were able to estimate the size of the back and dorsal area of a fully grown blue whale, visible above the surface. In this case, the individual blue whale in question has been registered as the right site. That's the name that's been given in the database. Right, Marianne? Yeah. Yes. The development of our sculpture first involved weeks of consideration, preparation and tests before we settled on fabricating the whale back in polystyrene to be covered by jesmonite, a very hard and durable but workable gypsum-based material. If we had had unlimited finances, this could have been made through 3D printing. Instead, we made this by hand with the help of 3D drawing and laser cutting the entire back of 4.70 meters in slices. The sculpture was 4.7 meters long, and at its widest point it was 1.20. What you see here is the result of maybe a month's work of coating, sanding, filling, and finessing the overall shape in its components parts. So this is it in the museum here downstairs. We decided on keeping the off-white color of the sculpture as a kind of blank canvas upon which multiple human narratives are inevitably projected, and instead of joining the sections, we chose to emphasize the fragmentation, partly to reference the multiple historic and contemporary uses of their body parts, and to serve also as an indication that the position of whales in the public and societal imagination is still highly contested and in many cases contradictory. So for our research, we had focused on 3 particular whales. And these are from the database in the research center here at the University of Iceland. And from the top, it's the one called the right side. And the Volcano 2 is in the middle, and Greenie is the name that has been given to the one at the bottom. Some from photographs taken to identify them, but I'm assuming that many in the audience know that the blue whales are identified by the patterns on their back. Is that right? Yes. Yeah. So we worked on enhancing those patterns on the back, and as you can see here, we have drawn them out, and we have this Volcano 2 Greenie, or the green whale, and the right side at the bottom. And we then took these patterns and they silk screen printed them onto glass to be framed in front of one of those fluke prints photographs that I showed earlier. Above you see here something of the testing process, exploring materials, positioning, and shadow formation. What we were hoping to happen was that with the with the pattern of the whale back on the glass itself and the distance given away from the photograph, you would have slight shadow and this coming onto the image. And this, it depends a little bit on the lighting in the room, of course. And this is just us using a transparent paper overlay. We tested it, of course, in many different semi-transparent and transparent materials. And then this is how it ended up for this particular exhibition. And alongside these processes, we had worked on a large-scale drawing, placing into it elements that continued to percolate during our research. These included the rocket harpoon first developed by Thomas Wellcome Royce, the association of crude oil production, which gradually came to supplant the need for whale oil in industry, and generally the rampant exploitation and greed of the whaling practices over the last few centuries. We haven't really shown these drawings, but we used it as a backdrop for one component of a video installation in the exhibition. This is downstairs. And this was for the interview of Marsibil Sól Þórarinsdóttir Blöndal, in which she talks about her childhood memories from visiting the whaling station in Hvalfjörður, where her father had worked each summer. In the video, one can clearly see her attempts at reconciling 2 worlds that were part of her upbringing, that of the hunter and flenser, her father, and the environmentalist animal activist, her mother. Her idyllic memories of those summers sits troublingly with her adopted vegan lifestyle. Her experience is likely in some ways to resonate with many in Iceland, or many Icelanders. An ink drawing of a beached humpback whale in the making in our studio. As mentioned before, in our work, we often draw attention to the individual in the animal world, and these ink drawings, documenting a variety of beached whales around the world, is a continuation of that practice. Each is captioned in pencil with the date of its discovery, its estimated age, the location, and the perceived reasons for the injury and death, very often though anthropogenic causes, ship strikes, incapacitation through net entanglement, noise, and other polluting factors. I don't know if any of you have seen the Icelandic newspapers today, but there is a big article on this whale in Seyðisfjörður that was hit, or they say actually it was already dead in the sea, and the ship just sort of picked it up on its, I don't know what you call it, front. But anyway, so this is kind of quite, it's still happening, you know, and I think many people think that it is rather unlikely that that story is the way it's been told in the newspaper. They are dead, yes, and no longer, but here for us, the water-based ink floating freely on the paper talk to this live process of decomposition. This is just another image. And downstairs we have 21 of them. So the project continues, and so do our thoughts relating to the concept. Here, a proposal for an armor, a veil camouflage, inspired by dazzle camouflage invented during the First World War. This technology was developed and deployed not to hide ships from enemy U-boats, but to confuse as to the size, class, direction, and speed of a ship. As an absurdist but poetic proposal here, it suggests a strategy to deter or inhibit unsolicited human attention and interference of any kind. So we have considered another sculptural work or series where such cladding would be used to clothe wooden veils such as the one you see here. This is another model that we made to size in our studio, and we haven't finished, but the exhibition is going to continue, and we're going to continue to develop the work. And in January of 2026, the Seas Blue Yonder will travel in a developed form to the National Gallery of Iceland. And briefly here, a few images of the artworks we made for the two exhibitions thus far. That is here in Skaftfell, Seyðisfjörður, and here in the Húsavík Whale Museum. So this is the one when it was in Skaftfell in Seyðisfjörður. And this is the video installation. And for the forthcoming manifestation in the National Gallery of Iceland, we will change this configuration in the video and supplement with other video footage that we've been gathering. And this is it from downstairs. We've had to cordon it off downstairs. Have many of you been downstairs and seen the work? Yeah. So we've had to cordon it off because people keep on wanting to rearrange the sculpture. We don't quite know why that is, but it's not supposed to happen. So unfortunately, we had to cordon that off. And then we have these 3 screen prints. That's of the different 3 whales, Volcano, Greenie, and the right side, and making the different patterns and shape clear. And also below is a text from the database of the Húsavík Research Center on the multiple sightings of these being recorded over many years. So we can see that this particular whale has been seen in these different places at these different times through a number of years, and then certain other information that we included as well. The how's the time? No, okay. So this is just from the exhibition of the beached whales downstairs, and we have called this work Hvalreki, which is the Icelandic name for beach fall, and in English we've called it windfall. This work, and then finally tomorrow, we will have a book launch here for this publication, which draws together documentation of the project, which started a couple of years ago and is to the present, which includes essays by Æsa Sigurjónsdóttir, Marian Rasmussen, Ævar Petersen, Philippa Ramans, and ourselves. And it has a preface by the director of this museum, Eva Björk Haraldóttir, and a foreword by Paris Dave. We hope very much you will join us for the event which takes place downstairs tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Thank you.